Hi everyone, it's Shania. Welcome to the Blonde Book Nerd. Today I thought we would talk about some books that would be really good to read during this quarantine time. I know many of you probably have a lot of extra time on your hands and you might be looking for something good to pick up. I put together a list here of kind of types of books that might be good to read during this time, and then I've got a recommendation to kind of go with it. So here I am, I've got my sweater on, but I've also got my pajama pants on and slippers, which many of you probably look the same. That's okay. Okay, let's dive right in. So the first thing that I thought of is, we have this time, and I don't know about you guys, but often I hesitate to reread things because I feel like there's so many books out there. I just want to read them all and I don't have enough time. Well, now we have a little extra. So I thought the first one could be reread an old favorite, which my instinct is to say Harry Potter, but I feel like you already know that. So what I actually did was I picked a book that I read this trilogy when they first came out, and I have not read them since. And the third one came out in like 2013. So it's been a long time, like 7 years since I've read any of them. So I kind of remembered some things, kind of didn't. And when I reread it, it actually was like I was kind of reading it for the first time, and I was surprised a lot. Some things I remembered, but anyway. So the book that I recently reread is Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. So I did actually reread the whole trilogy. I didn't realize Chain of Gold was coming out. I know, I'm so behind in the Shadowhunter world. But I really wanted to reread them so that I could pick it up. So I binge read the entire trilogy, and Chain of Gold is probably going to be in my near future. Okay, so the second one I thought about is, with all this time, I feel like it's a good time to kind of dive into some chunkier books that maybe you've been afraid of because, oh my gosh, it's going to take so long, but it might be a little easier to get through with all this extra time at home. So the book that I recommend, this is the longest book I have ever read. It is so long. It's 1,473 pages. Like, it is a brick, but it's so good and so worth it. The book I'm talking about is It by Stephen King. I love the movies, I love Pennywise, I love everything about it. So when I decided to read this, it did take me a month. I read it, I didn't read it entirely exclusively, but I did, like, this was my primary book, and it is worth every page. I love this book. I definitely would like to reread it at some point. It's just, I love this story. I love Derry. I love the Losers Club. It is fantastic. If you like the movies or just like Stephen King, or if you've even thought about this book but are intimidated by it, don't be. Like, pick it up. I've also heard the audiobook is fantastic. I read it physically, but if I do decide to do a reread, I think that might be the way I go, just to kind of try it out. The next recommendation I have is a book about resilience. And obviously these are really trying times, but I feel like it's so important to remember that hard times have happened before, they'll happen again, and we'll get through them. We will. So, without getting too much into it, because I don't want this to be sappy, the book I chose is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. I adore this book. And like, this one looks like it's a bit of a chunker, and it kind of is. 564 pages, but honestly, there's not that many. The spacing is pretty big, and it's just this book. I flew through it in like 3 days, and I worked on 2 of those days. You fall in love with these characters, and this is a World War II novel set in Nazi-occupied France, and just the 2 main characters deal with the war in such different ways, and neither of them are wrong, but they're both so strong. So I feel like this is a good book to read anytime, but now especially reading about characters who aren't in a great situation and they do their best. So good. On a lighter note, the next one I thought is that you know, everyone needs a good laugh. Everyone kind of needs to be taken away from what's going on and just get a good chuckle in. So I actually don't have the physical copy of the first book in this series because I had gotten it from the library, but I do have some later ones. The book I'm talking about is Paw Enforcement by Diane Kelly. So I actually have one of them here. It's Laying Down the Paw. This is like it's a cozy mystery, but not like a super traditional one. It's basically this female cop in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, and she has this partner who is sexist, misogynistic male who one day she has enough and she tases him somewhere she shouldn't have. And instead of firing her, they put her on the canine unit where she gets this German Shepherd named Bridget who is absolutely hilarious. Like, the dog is so funny and sassy and I love her, and I have a German Shepherd, so probably part of the reason why I love this series, but it is so funny. So the first book is actually about a bomber, and the one thing that's so unique about these books is it's told from 3 perspectives. So you'll have a chapter that's told from Megan, the main character's point of view. Then you'll have a chapter, it's usually kind of short, from Bridget's point of view, like the dog, and that's hilarious. And you also have a chapter from the bad guy's point of view, and sometimes you know who the bad guy is and sometimes you don't. So it's really interesting because you get the 3 perspectives simultaneously throughout the book as the story goes on. And it's so unique. I love it. Diane Kelly makes me laugh out loud in every single book. These are fantastic. If you haven't read them, and I don't really see people talking about them, pick it up. So the next thing I thought was to read a book set in a remote place. So right now, you can't really go out to the stores, you can't just go wander around a mall, like, those are things you cannot do, which normally we can. So I thought it'd be really interesting to read a book set somewhere where kind of resembles a little bit more, like, now not entirely obviously, but I'm just going to tell you the book. So it is The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker, and I chose this book because it's about Calla, who is very much a city girl, lives in Toronto, and she goes to Alaska to stay with her dad. And that is very much a culture shock for her. Everything is so remote to get many of the supplies. They're flying planes in and out. And it's very different. It kind of reminds you that you can be happy without a lot of the things that we think we need, and right now might not be an option. I adored this book. Calla and Jonah, it is a romance. So I love Calla and Jonah together. I love her relationship with her dad. Now, keep in mind, this book did make me cry, but it's okay. It was a good cry. I adored it. I really need to pick up the next one, Into the Wild, soon, because I adore these characters and I need more. If you haven't read The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker, I highly recommend it. You know that series that everyone else has read that you just haven't got to, but you've been meaning to and it just hasn't happened? Well, what a perfect time to read that. So I picked up the first book in this series a long time ago, which I have here, and I just finished the second one the other day, and I definitely plan on continuing soon because I feel like I've slept on this for so long and I really shouldn't have. But the trilogy is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. So I just finished Akamath yesterday, and oh my god, Rysand, I love him. So I know pretty much everyone has read this one already, but I'm going to be reading A Court of Wings and Ruin very soon. So that being said, because most of you probably have already read this trilogy, what series is it that everyone else has read that you haven't, that you keep meaning to, and you just haven't got there? Let me know in the comments down below. I'm really curious. The next one I thought is, right now, you know, planes aren't really flying. You're not really allowed to travel. But the beauty about books is that you can travel so far without leaving the comfort of your own home, which right now is how we need to do things. So I thought it'd be really interesting to read a book set in a place far away from where you currently live. So you get to adventure without going anywhere. So the one book that I did read a couple years ago that I'd never read a book set in this place, and that made it really interesting for me, was Next Year in Havana by Shania. This is a historical fiction about a girl whose grandmother is Cuban and she passes away, and her last wish was to have her ashes scattered in Havana, where she's from. So the main character, what's her name? Elisa travels to Havana by herself and kind of explores the country and learns a lot about what Cuba looked like in her grandmother's day and today, and just it really explores the history, talks about Castro, and it's a very interesting book. It is dual timeline, which is my favorite for historical fiction, and I must say, I enjoyed both timelines pretty well equally, which usually I have a favorite, but I didn't. So if you haven't read this one, definitely pick it up. Finally, I feel like we all need a little bit of heartwarming, something touching, just to make you smile right now. And the book I thought for that really had that effect on me is Nevermore, The Trials of Morgan Crow by Jessica Townsend. So this is the first in a new series. I haven't picked up the second one yet, but I really would like to soon. This is a middle grade, and I don't want to give too much away, but it's basically about this girl named Morgan. So Morgan is a cursed child, which essentially means she is going to die on her 11th birthday, and she's always known that. And then all of a sudden on her 11th birthday, this guy comes and is like, hey, you don't have to die, and takes her away, and it's so magical and fantastical. Like, this is the first time that I've gotten these vibes since like Harry Potter. And it isn't like Harry Potter, but it gives you Harry Potter vibes, if that makes sense. Like, I didn't feel like they were ripping off Harry Potter, but it just gave you that warm and fuzzy feeling inside about magic and hope, and this was so good. If you haven't read this one, it doesn't matter how old you are. It's a middle grade, but it's so good. So definitely pick this up. Okay, that is it for my recommendations. Hopefully you guys found something in here that interested you, that you might want to pick up during this quarantine, stay-at-home time. I really want to know what you guys are reading during this time. So let me know in the comments down below, what have you picked up recently that maybe you wouldn't have if things weren't like this right now. I'd really like to know. I'm always looking for good recommendations, so let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!